Taking a follow-up to our last episode, today's conversation focuses on joy in adulthood. We talk about joy as abundance and about the ways we can weave joy into our everyday and give it structure, not to squelch it, but to help it serve our best interests.
You're listening to the Joyous Justice Podcast,
A weekly show hosted by April Baskin with Tracy Guy Decker.
in a complex world in which systemic oppression conditions us to deny others and our own humanity. Let's dedicate ourselves to the pursuit and embodiment of wholeness, love, and thriving in the world and in our own lives. It's time to heal and flourish our way to a more joyously just future. Joy to the world. All the grown adults now. Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to Tracy and me. And you too. Hi, everybody. We're here for part dos, part 2 of Joy is for Adults. And I am very excited about it, if you didn't notice. Also, I just came from a walk outside and a oceanside journaling session, so I'm neurologically riding that high right now. Tracy often is on that tip. She's often exercising and doing karate and getting her morning workout in. And now that I've done enough healing and such here, I feel safe enough to go do more exploring out in my world. And it turns out there's a beautiful beach that I didn't even know about. That's just a 20-minute walk from my house.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yay. Okay. So, I think we said it on the last episode, although I can't remember. I was like, I definitely want to do a part 2 to this to continue the conversation. I've had some additional thoughts about it. I just introed us and got us started, as we often like to have me do. But I'm happy to pause here. And Tracy, if you want to bring your voice in or share what's on your mind, and together we can figure out the journey that we're all going to go on together on this episode. How does that sound?
Sure. I don't have a whole lot to add. I just have been really sitting with the insight that we've been conditioned to think of joy as a thing that only kids are allowed to have. And that's not the way the message, like those are not the words of the message, but that is the impact of the message, that like the things that brought us joy as when we were kids are now considered childish and we shouldn't partake in them. I certainly have gotten that message, and I just have really been sitting with that like, what a rotten picture of what it is to be an adult that we've been given. That just really continues to resonate and reverberate through my mind and my being since our last conversation.
I love that so much. It's really resonant. Tracy, as you know from a post I posted on Facebook, I've also been continuing to chew and metabolize our conversation, and specifically that insight that you had. I just think that that's really interesting, and I think that does contribute to a bit of a block for people, because a lot of the things that do bring joy have a youthful, vibrant element to them that we've been conditioned to associate with childhood or being childlike. And I think it's important that we just reclaim that and contradict it, because for me, it's so clear that joy is a really potent element for creating and facilitating profound and courageous innovation. That to me, it's so tied to creativity and free-flowing movement of energy in our minds and in our bodies that can lead to some of the insights that we really need in our world today. Not that that's the only way, but I think it's a key way. And yeah. You
know, I'm thinking about Marie Kondo, the the Japanese organization expert, who she sort of took the world by storm several years ago, pre-COVID. Although now she has a show on Netflix and everything. But when she talks about her criteria when you're trying to decide if you should keep something or let it go, you should ask yourself if it sparks joy, right? Like that's her instruction on, when you're sorting through your things and in organizing and purging what you don't, what no longer serves. The question is, does it spark joy? And I can remember like reading her book and being like, I mean, what about my socks? Like socks don't spark joy. But like sitting with our recent conversation, like there actually are socks that spark joy, but they're childish, right? Because they have like funny things on them or whatever it might be, which is like the more I think about it, the more I'm seeing other evidence that I have completely internalized the idea that joy is childish and something that, I should be above somehow. I'm using air quotes, that I should have grown out of.
I also, just a side note, I don't want to go deep down this path, but I also think it's really interesting that you mentioned Marie Kondo. And I think that was probably a challenge for a number of people. And I think I even vaguely remember that coming up for some folks. Like, what brings me joy in job? Does anything bring me? So let alone the thing. And then she also says, like, obviously there are certain things that you do need, but other than beyond what, like the essentials, what sparks joy. And it's interesting for me to think about, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, about when I visited Japan, and mind you, I was in high school, but there is, not necessarily in Japanese business world, but on the streets and around the country, I would argue that joy is more accessible in Japanese culture. Like when I visited, you could walk up to almost anybody and say, "May I take a picture with you?" And they'd be like, they would like this huge smile and throw up the peace sign and be like, "Hi." They would be like, "Joy, yes," or like photo booths and like the colors that they use in Japanese culture, that there is, in some ways, joy is very far, right? And there's issues around, as there are in the US too, but for different reasons, around suicide. Like, not that there aren't pressures and oppression and dynamics happening, but there's a way that joy is more accessible in the Japanese. And I never fully thought about that how that made sense sociologically, that Marie would frame the criteria around it sparking joy, because in Japanese culture, like they really love things that are cute, like that's what they like, oh, kawaii. Like there's like this whole thing around cuteness and joy and
right. Like I'm thinking about tea pets, like the little like the, and like and like the just in the art and the like the different utensils, or that there's more of a playfulness. The playfulness is more accessible in certain aspects of day-to-day life in Japan. And so that's just, for a longer conversation. And I recently connected with someone on Instagram who's an American who's married to a white American woman who's married to a Japanese man. And, I'm getting closer to thinking about us at some point, inviting guests on the show. And maybe we could have that conversation with this woman, Kate, on a future talk with her about that, among other things, at some future time. So thank you for bringing that back, because I think that is worth continuing to think about and chew upon. I think maybe it would be helpful. I referenced the Facebook post, and it might actually be helpful if I read it for those who aren't connected with me on Facebook. And then I think I want to transition into some other things and I think actually the quote might combine, like be a good segue between what we're talking about right now and the themes that you raised, that you brought to the surface or reminded us of, and then also what I was thinking about that I wanted to discuss, which I think might be different than what I thought I wanted to discuss at the end of the part one. So here's the post that I wrote on Facebook. Most people were conditioned. Oh, and also I wrote this after, for some context. We have people we just did our kickoff for our group program, our group coaching container, Grounded and Growing. And we engaged them in an activity
in sort of an energetic ledger. And one of the components of it was making note of things that bring them joy. And we shared some of our insights from having recorded the first episode, and, we're in conversation with them. And so this post was inspired by some of the themes that were talked about and what was raised in the group and what Tracy had shared. And so I wrote, most people were conditioned to associate some of what brings or brought us joy as quote unquote childish and quote unquote unproductive, because that's another piece of it too that I think is a big factor in American society and culture, is the impact of capitalism. How strategic, and then the quote, and then the passage continues going back to it. So us joy as quote unquote childish or quote unquote unproductive. How strategic of systemic oppression, wink. In truth, our joy is a portal to our raw and divine power, insight, and innovation. So here's how this conversation has continued to percolate and evolve in my mind is, as many of y'all may know, because I've said it several times, I really love certain milestones or moments that are particularly good times to set kavanot, to set intentions. And so our proximity to the beginning of 2023 and approaching it and now meeting it and moving into it has been an opportunity for me to pause and reflect about different things. And as I shared, I started to make a list about what brings me joy. And something that came up yesterday as I was rereading a book I like has some awesome simple name, and it's a simple short book, but boy, is it really great. And it's called Relax More, Try Less. And I don't have a specific, right? Well, I do. Sometimes I don't give myself enough credit. So here's what's coming up for me as I've been continuing to think about the joy piece and noticing, which also came up. I can't remember if it was on the episode itself or in our prep for it, but just, I love joy because to me, it's like one of the top, it's like up there with like love and profound knowledge and empowerment. But I also have been thinking about, as I've been living into joy more, it's friendly neighbors, like relaxation, and ease, that it feels different, but equally potent. And it has the same, or it has a similar pragmatic and spiritual effect on me, which is that when I'm in that zone, I'm not in scarcity. Both of those feelings are, for me, embodiments of abundance in different forms of enoughness, of either abundance or just like, I have what I need and it's okay. And also, if things aren't okay, then I can reach for help, and that there's possibility, that there is resourcing, that there is, I want to say hope, but it's stronger than hope. There's trust, that there's like trust and faith that I have what I need to navigate. So right now I can actually just be fully in the now and experience joy or relaxation or comfort or connection or intimacy. That's where I'm starting. How does that land for you?
The connection of joy with abundance really, really resonates for me. I think about joy, specifically joy, as it's like an overflowing, right?
Yeah.
Like when you get the thing and you like have to do your happy dance because you can't contain the emotions. Like that is, to me, that is abundance, right? There's this an abundance of positive energy. I don't want to reuse the word joy,
right?
To talk about it, that becomes a tautology. But sort of when I think about the things that, those childish, I'm putting quotes around that word, things that brought me joy, or that do, if I allow myself, like the emotion is big in the best possible way, such that I want to share it. And then, like when I think about the food that brings me joy, and like I have like a little happy dance that I do,
Yes.
where I sort of like shimmy my shoulders because it's too big to just be still.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because the energy, and that's part of my point,
and
or so that's part of the teachings that I've learned.
That abundance,
that energy is
that resonates. Like when you said that it's a place of abundance, I immediately thought happy dance, because like it's a thing that cannot be contained, and an overflowing in a good way.
I know I'm feeling an abundance where I want to like jump in because I'm like building on that energy, right? And as you said that, my immediate thought was, when you talked about that, like that overflow, one way of framing it that immediately came to mind is, to me, and relaxation is floating in the overflow. Relaxation is like being is allowing ourselves to be carried by it, and just like, like it's okay. I can just let go. Right. And you articulating it to me, it makes the case for why it is worthwhile when we're caring for ourselves well, and in the context of us taking time to heal when we need it, that these higher vibrations like joy or relaxation can also be a source of power, because it also creates energy that we can then harness to either create more joy, or for me, that's a state I like to get into at times. Because I love thinking of professional or work or commitment issues when I'm in that space, because solutions just come to me often. Like, oh, I could just call this person, or I could just, that abundance I have access to. My brain, my being has access to, oh, there's this thing I could do, or actually that isn't so important right now. I don't have to do that thing. Like any number of things, right? It lends itself to that spaciousness, to seeing the different options, not this scarcity of like, there's only this little, right? This narrowness of like, right? And all of these things, like the relaxation, they all have this element of expansion and flow. Please go ahead.
Well, the metaphor that is like taking up my whole brain space right now is, I'm thinking about, some sort of vessel, cup, whatever, where energy is stored, and relax. And then like, I put these partitions into it to like, look at just one piece of it. And relaxation is like removing the partitions and letting it all like just sort of be within the vessel, the way that the shape of the vessel itself, instead of like sticking all those, like I'm imagining walls that I'm building to build a little grid. And I'm like focusing on just like this little piece of this little grid. And relaxation like pulls those things out and lets everything just kind of meld and flow in the way that
as they need to. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And as they
kind of settle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Instead of forcing it up on the side because it's got a wall or whatever it is. Apparently I activated my smart speaker. Something I said.
I love it. The no wall. It was like no walls. Wait, I have things to say.
Yeah.
Let me talk. Which reminds me of a conversation I'd love to have with you about on a separate episode about AI stuff that I want to talk about, that I'm excited to share some of my thinking with you about it. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, this free flowing piece. So I want to take on a little bit of the role that Tracy normally takes, which isn't to say that Tracy still won't do her Tracy thing and do her concretizing that she likes to do. But I wanted to talk about some ways that I am, in the spirit of the rededication work that I am doing, I want to talk about some of the practices that I'm doing right now that's bringing me a lot of joy and that I'm feeling atypically excited and confident about. So I needed to take a moment here and bring my backpack. I tried out, I've been walking, and normally I like to walk with nothing. That way it's just less complexity. And with my ADHD, I don't have to worry about leaving anything anywhere. So I just have my keys around my neck and my cell phone in my hand. But today, since I was going to the ocean, I decided I would bring my backpack with me so I could bring my notebook and journal and stuff, which was really great until I had to walk back and it was hot. And then I was sweating with my backpack on. It's like, I'll have to continue to refine and iterate this and figure out how I want to do this. So a year ago, I bought this habit tracker thing. They have some of them online. I got introduced to this idea that maybe some of you have seen, that my friend Annie Rose London introduced me to. The doesn't have to be a circle, but this like circular 30-day tracking image.
It's like a favorite of bullet journalers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I got this, and it has space for daily, weekly, and monthly habits. So nothing about this is new per se, but here's the revisions that I've done to it. I've got this a little over a year ago. And I remember the first month that I used it, it was very helpful. It was around the time that I had to take an emergency flight home to help my mom with my grandmother being in hospice. And I found that during that season, that month, it was actually an anchor. It wasn't a burden. It became like, oh, I can do it gave me, when I wasn't doing family care and hospice care with my mom, in-home hospice care, or balancing, at that point, I think I was mostly on leave, but balancing a little bit of work for a few weeks, it was really helpful. It gave me structure when I needed it. And then after that, it sort of fell off, and it's much for those who are watching it on video. So the first month I did it, it wasn't perfect, but it was pretty active. And then it gets increasingly meh, as you go along. And to the last time I did it, where I just did it for 3 days, and it wasn't really resonating. But recently, and also to be fair too, when I was doing that, I was in the midst of that last month. That was in, Tracy, you'll appreciate this. That was in September. And I can't remember if I was in the midst of travel, or I think that might have been around the time of Tuba. And that was right when I was in the midst of really heavily reconsidering and gearing up to revamp our entire business model for the rest of the year. And that was taking up a lot of brain space. So anyway, I decided to approach it again because I really liked it that 1 month. And I was working with multiple themes here. And I was reminded in a video that I watched that discipline, the practice of discipline, which is a message that I got in a card reading I did for myself probably about 2 years ago now. And I resented it a little bit, but I also after a couple of days of thinking about it, and I understood it, and also with the other parts of the reading, that it was saying, with regard to your spiritual development and the ways that you want to evolve, discipline can help you with this. It can help facilitate the growth that you want, right? So I was able to reframe it not as a place of critique or saying that I was lazy, because I'm not a lazy person, but that perhaps a bit more structure would be helpful. And over the months and years, I started to think of it as discipline as a form of devotion or love. And that I can also think over the course of my life, and at certain times when I was really thriving, there was a consistent variable that there was some significant structure. So there was one summer in between school years in college where I stayed with and worked with Chabad of Sacramento for a while, separate story. And I had certain commitments in the early morning to help them run the camp and do certain things. And then I also had a lot of free space, but there were certain obligations that I had. And I found over the course of my life that I liked at times when I had certain structure to anchor me and then space to move within it, that worked really well. So I began thinking about that and thinking about what are different habits and rituals I can do. Anyway, I'm just going to skip ahead. So there's a bunch of different things. So part of the insight from our the insight that I've shared and that we've discussed and further deepened around joy and this idea as discipline as devotion, even though the habit tracker wasn't the most helpful nor particularly motivating, right now is a culminating time, a culminating season for me after doing 2 to 3 years of really intensive spiritual development. And it's ongoing, but I feel like I've sort of arrived where I want to be. As a mystic I've been working with told me, I'm at the base of the mountain that I'm meant to climb over my life. Like I've got the tools I need, and now I just need to keep going with what I've acquired and refining it. So all of these things, for all of these reasons and more, and we've also landed our team. I feel like we still have, but like I feel like we've figured out a way. Like we have a core offer now that we're deeply in love with, that we really believe in, that's getting people amazing results, that also can grow with us, that's adaptive, that we can continue to refine. And so all of these things lead me to like, now is a great time for me to reintroduce discipline, and that discipline can be a support to me as I continue to grow into these different themes. But here's some reframes that I did that I wanted to share now that you've had that 45-minute intro to it. Is I reframed it. I have a bunch of different names for it, but the shorthand for it is my joy bank. So rather than thinking of it as a habit tracker, as like a form of assessment, I think about it as, what am I putting energy into that's building and growing and evolving? Like, what am I designing or making that's beautiful? And less about, did I do that thing? And more about, like, did I make space for myself? And so I also chose things before I had a combination of certain things that brought me joy and other things that I felt like I had to do that were important. Like sometimes I had on a weekly basis, sometimes I had on a daily basis, like skin brushing or 20 minutes of strength training, and this time around, I had some of these similar things, but I just put it in different language. Like I wrote time outside in the sun, hydration, 60 to 90 ounces, which is a pretty broad range, but that I get at least 60 ounces, no more than 90. Meditation. And I also mixed up the order of it. And I have 2 to 3 hours I've decided my shorthand for it is body love. So I call it now body. What am I doing for body love today? And that's short for like body movement, engagement, pleasure. Like it might be, especially this is also based around me being a mental projector. And one of the things about mental projectors and the field of human design is that environments are really important. So part of it for me is to get an hour or 2 of movement, but also it might be like sitting for the beach or like sitting near a tree or just putting my body in a place where I can be nourished and relax, allow myself to float or feel joy and embodied relaxation and joy, not just mental, but a full body experience. So anyway, and in the center of it, I wrote a bunch of the vibes that I want to be feeling. I wrote like deep breaths, appreciation, relax, surrender, release, ease, relief, smile. Anyway, I like put a lot of time and love into it, more so than I have in the past. And I even highlighted certain parts because I found like when I got to the midpoint or even a third of the way through, it got hard to track which of the 10 things went where. And I have Asana in here, Asana updates. Like anyway, so I have some things in here, but I'm noticing, basically what I'm trying to say among a few things is I'm reintroducing discipline, but bringing it in a way that is more feminine and is more soft and loving and releases as much of the perfectionism. Because I noticed as I started to prepare to do these things that I started to ramp up and hold myself to these really high standards about and I was like, whoa, this is not sustainable. This, whatever this autopilot ramp up is, no. I can be disciplined. I can engage in a devotional discipline and do it from a place of love and ease. And I think I need to, if this is going to be sustainable, right? So it's been like really fine tuning it, Tracy, and noticing and doing different things and I've read it in the books for years, but it's taken me a while to figure out what it looks like for me to like encourage myself. So like now I have a practice daily where if I start to make progress on one thing, like my brain says like, you can't circle it, you can't fill it in because you haven't completed it yet. But I've started to like make a dot there, which is really helpful for me to see, like, I started this, like I've done my morning writing. I haven't done my evening writing, but I did write 3 pages. So like, I'm going to make a mark there, just doing things that encourage myself, that doesn't like cut corners, but but it's just being really loving and finding ways of weaving joy into this process itself. And not just having a point on here, which I do, of joy, appreciation, high, good vibes. But also weaving joy throughout it. So not just not being perfectionistic or like really high strung about it, which I feel like is how a lot of us are conditioned to be around these things. Like it's high stakes. You have to get the A. Like there's like this energy, and just releasing that and being like, no. How I'm going to quote unquote get the A or help my business thrive is by me being as at peace and relaxed and grounded and joyful throughout the day. So being abundant, so that as we're navigating different things, I can hold space for my team. I can think of different solutions. I can remember that there are many solutions and there's all kinds of supports. So,
April, something that I'm thinking about, like while you were talking about like sort of that like perfectionism, that like have to get an A
energy that can show up. Without even trying, it showed up autopilot. Like I didn't invite her, but she was like, "We're ready," like drill sergeant, and I was like, "Okay, how about not?"
So, but it takes a minute. Sometimes you don't see that.
No,
right?
No,
like,
I didn't at first, and then I was like, "Why am I feeling unhappy?" And then I was like, "Wait, this energy has shown up because she thinks that she's helpful,
right?
To help me,
right?" And I'm. So I recently had an experience where that person showed up. It was a different sort of experience.
Yeah, different circumstances.
But so my car was recently vandalized. Somebody broke out the window, and thank God no one was hurt. And actually nothing was taken, but it's a big hassle. And I got all these hassles, whatever, trying to get it fixed. I got stuck in that place, right? In that like must do it. And it was so that energy narrows the view of what the solution can be so much, right? Like, so I was in tears on the phone with the insurance company because they couldn't get, an appointment to get the car repaired. And I can't do carpool. I can't put kids in the car with no window. It's winter in Baltimore. And I was in tears because I was stuck in that place with this like the only solution I could see was to go get the car fixed and wait with it. And finally, the woman on the other end, she was so kind. The Geico customer service person was so kind and like gracious with me in my tearful moment. She was like, "We'll just get you a rental." And like my initial was like, "No, that's a waste of," and then I was like, right.
Oh,
that's why you have
solution.
Insurance.
Yeah.
Just get a rental. Right. And actually like the rental's kind of fun to drive. It's like I drive a 15-year-old car. So now I'm driving like a 2022. It's actually kind of nice, but I was so stuck in that like,
narrow
kind of
place.
Tense, like,
the constriction,
and the walls in that cup. Like it was all pushed up all the way against the edge of that vessel, and that's all I could see. Like I associate it with my shoulders being up around my ears.
Yeah, me too.
Like that sort of like
short
tense,
breath.
Like,
for me, my breath, people
fixed it.
Yeah, for me, it's short breath. Like sometimes people, when I was first learning to drive, I didn't notice, but often the person driving next to me would say, "Breathe, April." And I'd be like, "Oh," and I wasn't, it's not a conscious thing, but I just, the breathing gets shallow. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been told at least once, my karate instructor, "Breathe, Tracy," while I'm practicing kata. I think I'm breathing.
Great. I mean, clearly I am somewhat because I'm conscious. But apparently there could be more breath, right? And and so, as it is for a lot of people, and for me, it shows up around the ways that are particular to me that also aren't unheard of for other people. There's multiple variables here. There's that I want to, and also I have some nice momentum from all the things I've learned. So I'm benefiting from that. So if you're someone who you decide to take on something like this, if you're just doing this and you haven't done something like this in a few years, as much as you can, try to be easy on yourself. Nearly all habit books, especially this one by this neurobiologist I read, really stresses, and I've never once done it, but I can see the benefit of it, that like really we should only try to form one habit at a time. This tracker has 10. And so before I got the tracker, I spent a month or two having one anchor habit and trying to do one other thing, because that was my compromise. And also recognizing that if I miss a day with that other one, it's okay, because Dr. So-and-so says this Happy Brain book that I should really, really just focus on one. I think it was like for 60 days uninterrupted. And if you miss a day, then you need to start over again. And I did that for like a few months until I did it. And I also kept a running tally of the original time, because that was also kind of discouraging. So I started the new timer over, and I also did like 20 days minus 2. So I could see, in case I got discouraged later, I could be like, okay, this is still pretty great. So the thing that I want to keep in mind is I'm really hopeful with this, because I've reframed a number of these things are explicitly around feeling good, and some of them aren't direct, although most of them are, because even the decluttering decluttering itself doesn't make me feel good, but I know that the once I declutter and the impact that it has, both pragmatically and mystically, and also just really practically, like I can go to my headband drawer and know that it's going to be in there because I know I put it away the day before. So even that, I'm able to, it takes a little bit of momentum building, but I'm like, I know I feel good when, and within decluttering, I also include, like yesterday, I closed some loops around some financial matters. So it wasn't about anything in spatially, but it was just like I needed to take care of certain things. To be honest, actually, I got to the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I didn't declutter. And then I remembered, oh no, according to this decluttering expert I worked with 10 plus years ago, Vicky White, she included both the space definitely, but also what are open loops that need closing, that are taking up mental clutter in your brain or in your logistics. And so I was like, oh no, I definitely spent like 40 minutes on that. So I achieved the 20 minutes. I'm good. Anyway, so I feel confident about it because I've framed most things in a way where it's like nourishing for me. And I'm also holding, I just want to say that I'm holding that with my ADHD, I hopefully not, but I know most likely in a few months, I'm not going to be able to do all these things. Like it's temporary, or these things aren't going to have the same effect. But one thing that gives me hope that I haven't had before is that, one, I can adjust a number of these things, and I can also use this frame of joy and or relaxation, or like good feeling, energy, and spaciousness, that if I apply that with that too, and think about devotional discipline, and I don't have 10 items worth of discipline available, but I do have some. And also I've built up my bank. I built up my reserve. So now if I have a few months where I'm going a little lighter, I'll be okay. Anyway, but it's starting to feel like, for more so than it has in the past, that I'm feeling good right now. And if, or more likely when, something unexpected happens, or it's just not like my dopamine receptors, my brain, like it's just not having the same effect, that I can regroup from a place of love. And Tracy, I might come to you, and I might come to y'all later and be like, okay, I'm here. Here's what's working. I need a little help. And it'll be hard, because it's gonna be really hard for me to do that, to say like it's not working, and I'll need time either with you, or more likely with one of my trauma peer counselors, to process some grief that's going to show up around it, that honestly likely is mostly old grief, but it's going to show up around being sad that even as I'm saying this, I think there's still probably some part of my brain that's just hoping that I could be neurotypical, that I could like put in all this work and it would last. But I know that through my different practices that help me stay balanced, and through finding different ways to still access joy and appreciation and relaxation, I'll find the next iteration of the path, and it'll be okay. And knowing that and remembering that and reassuring myself of that helps me feel free to thrive as much as I have capacity for right now, and worry less about the likely inevitable slowdown that will come. So in case that's helpful for anyone, if you have that, it feels like a variation. It's like, I would like, it's a little bit about what, Brené Brown calls foreboding joy. I might call it like foreboding productivity or foreboding, drift. Yeah. Like
Samir calls it drift.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I liked his frame around drift. That actually was really helpful for me because then when it happened, thank you for reminding me of that. A coach who we worked with, who you've heard of, if you've been listening to the podcast, you might have heard us mention him before. He talked about this concept of drift. And what I liked about his framing of that, Tracy, is that he made it clear, not that he was talking to me, but to the group. And also I think I asked a question about it, that it actually wasn't just me, that even neurotypicals have drift. And it helped me reclaim some power back. And I actually think I was able to get through it. So that's also, thank you for reminding me of that, because not from a place of perfectionism or shaming, but that's a helpful reminder. Maybe you can remind me of that if and when when drift shows up for me. I'm sure the ADHD is a factor, but that too, it happens to everybody, and that there are things that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Including revisit Demir's stuff, or even email him, since he periodically emails us, and be like, Demir, I'm experiencing drift. Help. So if and when you experience drift at any point, whether it's relating to something that you're recently rededicating yourself to, or something you rededicated yourself to a while ago and you're still cruising on, but drift may occur, that it's superhuman and normal, and that as we teach in Grounded and Growing and in Roadmap to Resilience, that slowing down a little bit and not rushing, trying to rush through it and fix it, or rush past it and ignore it, and just slowing down and bringing some breath to it can help us remember that we can get support and either get back on track if that's available for us, or for some of us, if that's not available, we can figure out something else that's also really good. So that's not the most joyful note to end on with our joy part 2. Joy is for, what are we calling it again, Tracy? What's the title of this?
Silly Rabbit. Joy is for grown-ups.
Silly Rabbit. Joy is for grown-ups. So I just did some grown-up-y stuff. So let's end with a bang. And what's a joyous note we can end on? Do you want to talk about, maybe we can talk about a couple things. Did I talk about popcorn in the last episode?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I have really gotten into making stovetop popcorn. I wanted popcorn the other day, and they didn't have regular popcorn. They just have the kernels. And so, and for whatever reason, popcorn videos have been showing up on TikTok for me and on Instagram. And so I put a bunch of butter in. Not a bunch, I just put a little bit, but I really love butter. And made myself some popcorn, and I used a clear lid, and it brings me so much joy to make it.
My spouse likes to make popcorn on the stovetop too. They like to shake it. Yeah. They love shaking it on the burner. It's really adorable.
I love shaking it. And also at times I put it at an angle so it concentrates all of them, and they pop more, and they pop up to the top of the pan. And sometimes I burn it. Usually I don't. And we have a carton from some time, a plastic bin at some point when somebody gave us popcorn. And so I use that, and I put my popcorn in the popcorn thing, and then I fill it. And for the first time, which means I've gotten good at it, Asan ate half of it. Sometimes you eat a little bit, but now I've gotten better at it. Because one time I tried to just air pop it and put salt, but then salt has nothing to stick to, so it just goes up to the bottom. So then I realized, boo-hoo, as in yay, I have to use butter when I make it so that the salt sticks, because then it's divine. And it's and also I really like it because I've had some issues with Candida, with certain things being out of balance, with my diet and stuff. And I also think actually joy, which is also why I'm prioritizing this, because in a book I have, it cites that some candida issues can be from a lack of joy. And I was like, I'm the CEO of Joyous Justice. I need to get this together. This is I need to get it together. And I love the popcorn because it doesn't, even though I know it's not that good for me, but it doesn't seem to have,
it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Either.
It doesn't seem to have a negative, like I don't feel
Pretty
crappy
neutral.
later. It doesn't make me feel, I feel full, but like it doesn't have a negative effect. So I love it because it's something, because when I'm in the States, there's all kinds of things I can eat that are either actually really healthy or are neutral that I can, as an eater, but here there aren't as many, but this is really great. So that's something that has been bringing me joy.
Yeah. On the food note, I recently made a vegan pumpkin pie with a pumpkin that grew in my garden.
Oh my gosh.
It was so good. And my spouse found this vegan Cool Whip made out of coconut milk. So I had this vegan pumpkin pie with Cool Whip that was really, really good. I made the sweetened condensed coconut milk on the stovetop.
Oh my gosh.
And I was really proud of myself. It was delicious.
Tracy can bake, y'all. It's one of her love languages, and she baked for me, and it was divine. It was so good.
I really do like baking, and my new thing is to try and bake.
I thought I like
vegan
baking,
versions,
but I think you have me beat.
I'm working on vegan versions of things that I love before I went dairy and egg free. So my next.
So Hello looked amazing. She made like loaves of bread.
Oh, they were really good.
They looked amazing that were vegan. Yeah, they were good.
Yeah,
they looked amazing.
This past one. What did I do differently? Oh, I kneaded a lot longer than usual because I wanted it to be bigger. So they were really good. My next one, I'm going to make black bottom cupcakes, which, I don't know, maybe it's a Baltimore thing, but it's like a devil's food cake with like this cream cheese kind of dollop on it that sits on top, like a cream cheese.
I wonder if that has like a racialized history behind it.
I don't know. Like I went looking for them when I went to college in Ohio and like couldn't find them. Like it's like a Baltimore, maybe a Baltimore.
Did you get any
Jewish
weird
thing.
faces?
I used to get them at the Jewish.
When you asked for,
people just didn't know what I was talking about. A black bottom cupcake. Yeah, I don't know. But that's my next. I'm going to make that this week. I found a recipe for some cashew cream cheese, and I cannot wait to make this devil's food cream cheese black bottom.
Oh my
cupcake.
gosh!
So stay tuned.
I'm going to stay happy with my popcorn. And the one thing I want to add about it too, in terms of other things, is that last night I started craving it while I was doing a trauma session with one of my regular trauma counselors, where I was the counselor. And I was like, I started really craving it. And I think in retrospect this morning, I didn't realize it at the time. I think they were saying something that was reminding me of some of my material. And I was like, comfort food. And then I remembered I'd done my walk, I'd eaten dinner. I wasn't hungry, and I'd done my post-meal walk to support digestion. And so I was like, do I really want to start another digestive cycle? And also I've been working on my sleep patterns. And I noticed for me that light, as well as when I eat my food and how much distance I have from after I've both worked and eaten, and so I was like, do I really want to F up my sleep and potentially my next day? And so I didn't do it. And then I took L-glutamine, which I saw online. I have it for muscle recovery, but apparently it also helps with cravings. So like I took an L-glutamine, I drank water, and then I did my session. And then I think between actually taking my turn to process some emotions, I was fine. And I was like, I'm literally not hungry. I really don't. And it's late. It's like 11 o'clock. I don't need to have popcorn right now if I want to try to go to bed. And I went to sleep before midnight, Tracy. Yeah. So basically what I want to say is that I wasn't fully sure where it was going, but I think the point I want to make is that self-care and loving, supportive, not forceful moderation is also ended up facilitating my joy, right? Like knowing it was an option and being like, I can just wait till tomorrow and eat it within a time frame that can help me do, and without even fully thinking about it, that whole moment was an alternative to that harsh voice that can show up. that I've been conditioned with of like, not that. There was no shame in it. It was just like, do I want to have a belly full of popcorn when I go to bed in half an hour? Like, is that going to lead to a good night's sleep? Darn it, I think not. Do I even really need it now? No. I can make it tomorrow. When I bought, just for what it's worth, like we bought like, cause they come in little bags here. I feel like in America when they buy, you can buy like a whole like container, like a whole like thing of kernels, but here they just sell it in, at least at this one store we went to. And so this past time I bought 2 and I bought a whole extra stick of butter that's just for the popcorn. So I'm like, I have all of that. Like it's gonna be fine. And I know that digestion can keep me awake among a lot of different things. It can keep me awake. So that was just really sweet too. And I think that's I think what I'm trying to say here, what's emerging is to me, joy in its best form as for adults is a beautiful dance between our childlike spirit and a loving, well-nourished adult who can say, yeah, now's a great time for this, or let's put the crayons away for right now, but we can do this tomorrow, sweetie. And that can all be a part of that abundance of like, there is abundance, but just because we have abundance doesn't mean we want to be, say, like eating donuts all day. Because as I learned in 7th grade with my brother, we lived in this really great apartment complex that had an activity center that had different events, and they had like a donut Saturday breakfast, and not many people came. They had a ton of leftover donuts, and my brother and I got to eat as many as we wanted. I learned around like 7 or 9 is the point at which it goes from being bliss to wanting to upchuck. Right? Like, but I had to try it out to see. I learned, and I didn't have many limits. Like one time, my best friend Josh and I decided we were going to eat box macaroni and cheese, and we both loved it so much. And so we decided we would each make 2 boxes. I can't remember if I've talked about this on this show or not yet. And poor Josh was sick the rest. I had a really high I was an eating machine as a child. So I think I didn't have enough energy to finish his, but I debated it. But he got through like 1.5, and he spent the rest of the afternoon hunched over the toilet. Poor Josh. And I never experienced that in childhood or in my life ever, except that one time with the 7 donuts. So all of this to say, I was getting there, and I got there a little farther, that yeah, certain elements of joy are childlike, and that there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. And that can be joyous and liberatory, or a part of decolonization for us to reclaim the fullness of our humanity. And for those of you who are just starting to step into it or consider it, to know that we also get to bring our loving adult side along with us, and have balance as we experience joy, and take really good care of ourselves, and have some time for reckless abandon. And also there's a Jewish concept around this. Maybe you can help me, Tracy. There's like kiruv, and maybe it's not kiruv. There's like 2 words. We might look it up and put it in the show notes. There's like 2 concepts. One is like structure, and the other is like kavanah, or intent or spirit. And there's a way in which our joy can be like that too, where it can be free flowing, and we can also have loving structure around it and still feel really great. And that is one of my many wishes for all of us in this coming year in 2023, that in the ways that make sense for each of us, that we can start to access and explore joy or other good feeling vibes, relaxation, comfort, and those of us who have a bit more experience, that we can really lean into it and start to leverage it as a source of power and inspiration as we advance the projects and issues that we care about.
Hey fam, we had so much fun offering Roadmap to Resilience back in December. We're doing it again. This time, it's a 5-day workshop starting on January 23rd with bonus days, and it's all free. Go to joyousjustice.com to sign up. See you there.
Thanks for tuning in.
To learn more about Joyous Justice LLC, our team, and how you can get involved with our community, check out the info in our show notes or find us at joyousjustice.com.
If you enjoyed this episode, show us some love.
Subscribe wherever you're listening.
Tell your people. Share what you're learning and how your leadership is evolving.
Stay humble,
But not too humble,
and keep going.
because the future is ours to co-create.